Nancy Pelosi, her visit to Taiwan has been, I think, not covered critically enough. So I want to do a deep dive into that to start off the show. Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan and just left either yesterday or I believe yesterday. And no, this is not a diplomatic visit. Reports indicate that Biden and Blinken were unhappy with her decision, but that they let her basically go ahead with it anyway. And she's the most senior official to visit Taiwan in decades. It's notable to say that there's a power imbalance here, right? Because the Taiwanese government officials are not necessarily in a position to turn down a U.S. Politician of her stature, given the United States' commitment to defending Taiwan militarily if China does choose to escalate. But the U.S. has not really contested China's sovereignty publicly over Taiwan since the 1970s, so it's a very delicate balance here. And that is independent of our views on Taiwan self-determination, because of course I think Taiwan should be able to be independent if it so chooses. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the United States as a third party and its posture potentially escalating conflict between China and the United States. And this also comes after the bill just passed the Senate, the CHIPS bill, which is explicitly written in a way that escalates rhetorically at the very least, and also economically, a rivalry between the United States and China. And I just think history should tell us that we should be wary of these kinds of escalations based on the Cold War and the fallout from that. And it's a complex dance, but Nancy Pelosi threw a wrench in that, presumably against the wishes of the Biden administration, against what most diplomats and people in international relations and government and people who analyze this from the outside, against all of those recommendations. And here she is in Taiwan responding to the outcry about her visit, which I think should have been a bit more specific, frankly.
But I think it's important to note that members of Congress, several of them have made trips just earlier this year. 5 senators, bipartisan, came, again, including the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, Mr. Menendez, came. Not too much of a fuss was made. Individual senators have made trips or plan to make trips. And I just hope that it's really clear that while China has stood in the way of Taiwan participating and going to certain meetings, that they understand that they will not stand in the way of people coming to Taiwan. It's a show of friendship, of support, but also a source of learning about how we can work together better in collaboration. So, I think that they made a big fuss because I'm speaker, I guess. I don't know if that was a reason or an excuse, because they didn't say anything when the men came.
More female conflict escalators, right? I mean, I cannot believe that she took that tack, but naturally, I guess that's something she falls back on. Can we pull up this thread from this Harvard professor who's done actual work in this space? He spoke about why her visit to Taiwan was such a terrible idea. Do we have this? Here's William H. Overholt. Thread. Pelosi accomplished much in Taiwan. She stimulated cyber attacks, got thousands of businesses banned from exporting to China, shut down the important cross-strait communications tool Weibo, elicited mainland military exercises, and stimulated an imminent temporary blockade. Could scroll down. Long-run consequences are more important. She raised tensions at the time when tension is already excessive. She damaged Xi Jinping when he's ensuring his third term and is under attack for being weak on Taiwan. This forces him to take especially strong ongoing measures. She irritated allies who want support against China but fear U.S. provocation of China. From Australia to Japan, they resented not being consulted. And by the way, this is at the same time that the U.S. is doing its annual military exercise off the coast of China with other Asian countries. She made the U.S. look weak and divided by ignoring the advice of the most informed parts of the executive branch. Biden made that worse by insisting he couldn't influence her, and Blinken made it worse by appearing supportive after the fait accompli. She raised the baseline for future military signaling, which, to show seriousness, will now have to start with exercises completely surrounding Taiwan and likely blockading it. The added tensions will imperil vital efforts to get China to agree to guardrails that would limit the risks of accidents, misunderstanding, and unwanted escalation. What she didn't do was strengthen Taiwan or U.S. support for Taiwan in any way. Trump, Pompeo, and Biden already pushed that support to a point that jeopardized the 1979 understanding, which is the foundation of Taiwan's enjoyment of peace, prosperity, and democracy. Her visit was not just a rerun of Newt Gingrich's visit a generation earlier, which occurred during an entirely different relationship between the two countries. It was a political stunt that took a dangerous situation and made it more dangerous. I thought that was very well put, frankly. The reality of the situation is that, as I said kind of at the start of the show, the stakes for Nancy Pelosi are very different from the stakes of the people in Taiwan. As I mentioned, I think her visit was concealed up until the very last moment, partly because they want to take China by surprise to a degree, but it also, there were memes reportedly circulating about her visit that no one even knew who she was, and yet she's going there as a political stunt in order to kind of put a capstone on her decades of China hawkery, or anti-China hawkery, I should say, in the House as her career comes to a close soon, hopefully. That seems to be the consensus about her motivation. But we don't face the risk of military threat or violence based on this kind of visit or provocation. Taiwan does. Taiwan does. And so for her to conflate and say that just because past government officials have done this, she's third in line to the White House. She's Speaker of the House. There's understanding.
I have to say on that, like, this is not to downplay the significance of it, is to basically play on people's ignorance of how it's being greeted in Taiwan, which is a major, like you said, third in line coming to visit them, which doesn't happen.
Yeah, of course. And so
because of the historical reason, like both Taiwan and China think they're China, like for historical reasons, right? Like this isn't some sort of like, this is a very complicated historical and political problem. And yeah, I think Pelosi, and I also just want to note, some people are saying that we can't really know for sure if this was against the wishes of Biden and Blinken. Will not, that just take their word for it until they classify like communiques and stuff like that. But it really, it's what it seems to be is like sending a message to the world post-Ukraine that we're the tough guys still. And that's not a message that I want Pelosi sending.
And for people downplaying military exercises because of this and the show of force by China as they were shooting live ammunition and missiles across in the waters outside of Taiwan, think of how you would feel if you were in Taiwan. I think there's really an arrogance surrounding this discussion, frankly. We don't know how that feels. And no one seemed to think this visit by Pelosi was a good idea, and I really wish that the coverage about it treated the decision with the respective disgust that it deserves, frankly.
I mean, I think the problem is we have, frankly, a very jingoistic mood that likes the the appearance of toughness, and this is going to work for a lot of people. I think at least that's what Pelosi thinks. Like, we're going to look tough again, and I think there's a lot of people who want that, unfortunately.
I was reading some response in the New York Times, and they said, "What, Pelosi just really undercut the Republicans' position on China in the midterms."
Oh, and I guarantee that is on Pelosi's desk on whatever plane she's flying across from, and they're drinking wine over it.